If I could call Chrono Cross one thing, it would be complex. There are 6 different element colors, and the game expects you to use all of them so that you don't get wrecked. But I decided to simplify things and use just one color, green.
If it ain't green, I'm not interested, okay?
So with the exception of one battle, I'm going to beat Chrono Cross with only green characters and elements.
No, not that green stuff.
That means every single yellow enemy will do extra damage, every green enemy will take reduced damage, and my life is about to become a plant-based nightmare. I begin the challenge without access to green characters or elements, but we do have a starchy white vegetable named Potato. But one potato does not a salad make, so he plucks a plump poochie from his hometown, and we call her Butternut. And then our adventure begins. Our first challenge is to defeat 3 Komodo dragons, which proves to be a challenge because I can't jump properly, but I eventually managed to catch one. Now, when no green characters are available, my only option is to use weak attacks and green elements. I made this rule because presumably one green character with their full strength could do exactly what my nerfed characters have to do here. Anyway, the first Komodo dragon gets mashed, number 2 is smashed, and I make a puree out of KD3.
That is amazing. Wow. Like, oh my god.
But then the Big Mama comes out, and with only weak attacks and no healing available, Big Mama is challenging. She manages to boil Potato with her water breath, leaving only a big ball of butternut to stand in her way. But she's ultimately pulverized by our yellow doggo, getting us the final Komodo dragon scale. But alas, our poor Potato gets sucked into the great cosmic food processor and is dispensed into another world. Sadly, the lack of green elements persists as I explore Ernie Village, so I'm just stuck with what I got for now. But it seems some friends have noticed that our vegetables are heretofore unseasoned. So Pepor knocks bland butternut off a cliff, and he, Karsh, and Salt sprinkle themselves onto our regretful russet. But a spicy girl comes to stop the madness, and we take them on. Unfortunately, we have no elements in this battle, so I have to rely on only physical attacks to beat them. I attack Karsh first, aiming to negate his strong attacks as quickly as possible. On his defeat, though, my veggies are battered and about ready to be fried. Nonetheless, with some luck, Salt gets wrecked before he can use his somersault ability. And with Girl at just 1 HP, he gets taken down by a tater tot. And Girl becomes Bell Pepper. But as is tradition, oh crap, I messed up! I said yes to Kid. I said yes to Kid. I did it again! By allowing Kid to join the party, I have locked myself out of another plant-based babe, Lena. So I reset, fight again, and take down these spicy fiends in record time. Which means Lena joins our party and she becomes Lufa. And given that I can't resist men with big sticks, I also recruit Mojo, who becomes Zucchini. And with that, we head to Fossil Valley for one final fight with the Spice Boys. And this battle is no bueno. Pepor strengthens himself, puts Butternut in a box, and then he and Salt dice up my Potato with a searing crosscut. Potato does manage to defeat Salt before anyone dies, though. But Pepor then uses a Pepor box attack on my little Butternut and gives her the axe soon after. His next attack dices my Potato, and from there, the battle is a disaster. Because all of the elements Salt and Pepor have been using are red, meaning they've manipulated the field effect to be red, the opposite of blue. And Lufa, of course, is a blue innate. That means that all of her attacks do less damage. 1 damage per attack, to be exact. And this means that Pepor can easily outdamage her and remove her from the ecosystem, and I die. Fate has no forgiveness for potatoes who stand against it. And I realize I've forgotten something. Oh, I can get Arrow Saucer in the Hydra Marshes? Oh, I should do that, you're right. And I was wrong. It was a Bushwhacker, which is weaker. But still, that's better than nothing. But still, there's something else I've overlooked. I have a bunch of antidote elements, and I can use these during the battle to change the field effect, decreasing the damage Salt and Pepor can do. So I try again. Lena immediately uses her Bushwhacker element, and this drops Salt to critical HP almost immediately. Unfortunately, he then dodges 3 87% accurate attacks, but still, Butternut is able to defeat him with great efficiency. That means there's just one peppery boy left to fight, and cutting to the chase, with 3 characters alive, I'm able to bust my Butternut on him within seconds. And I think I wrote that joke a second time somewhere in the script. I will be watching out for it. Oh, it's right It's like right next. And if you love busting your butternut, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way you can hear more bad jokes and more inappropriate puns. And if you love it enough, consider joining the Tantacles. For $5 a month, you can gain early access to my videos and my undying gratitude. But sorry, you're not gonna get my butternut. The death of Salt and Pepper represents a huge turning point, because at the shop, we now get access to 2 green spells that will change the game entirely. The first is the heal spell, and this restores health. That's something we haven't been able to do at all until now. And the second is Arrow Saucer, which will let us increase our damage 10-fold. So I grab as many of them as I can carry, and I allocate them to my characters. And here we have to make a choice. The game branches into 3 paths, and we can recruit only one of 3 characters: Guitar Boy, Feeble Fop, or Goth Magician. The choice, though, is obvious. We still have no green characters available, so I go for the guy with the highest magic stat, the Black Innate Guile, who gets named Corpse Flower. And with that, I pay 100G to rent, not buy, a boat. We don't buy boats here. Don't do it, little girl. And then we're taken to the Bluffs. And our next boss fight is honestly kind of wimpy. 2 random Acacia Dragoons who die almost immediately. But then it's time for the Battle of the Burbs. I initially focus my attacks on the Bluebird, whacking it hard with an Arrow Saucer. A second Arrow Saucer and some attacks from Butternut are enough to nut its butter. I next focused my attacks on King Moaman since he gets stronger once his cronies are defeated. An Arrow Saucer from Butternut and another 2 from Corpse Flower are enough to bring it down to critical health. Unfortunately though, on his next turn, he flies up into the air. That means he'll dodge every single attack from my pretty plants. Fortunately though, magic does not have the same restriction, so Potato uses another Arrow Saucer, and another one from Butternut is enough to remove him from the battle. And with him gone, the final red bird is no problem. I'm out of equipped elements, but I'm able to just whack him for the win. Unfortunately though, we still don't have any green characters, and that's a big problem for the next battle with Lucia's bulb. They're green innate, meaning any elements I use will only strengthen their attacks. However, the field starts off yellow, meaning I can at least do some damage with Butternut before things get hairy. And unfortunately, they only attack Butternut to start, which is bad because as a yellow innate, Butternut takes increased damage from their attack, and eventually they're able to use a Bush Basher to overkill her. Fortunately though, Butternut's attacks have weakened one of them, and Potato is able to defeat it pretty expediently with physical attacks. The other one though is pretty dangerous. It drops Corpse Flower to low health with a couple of physical attacks, but I'm able to use a heal element to keep him safe. But then it attacks Potato with a crippling Bush Basher, so now he's on life support, and another Bush Basher takes him out. And with just Corpse Flower left, things are pretty grim. Corpse Flower is not a great physical attacker, and with only green elements available, it's hard to quickly dispatch the other bulb, though he does drop it to critical HP. Unfortunately though, the retaliatory Bush Basher hits home, and I die. I'm gonna have to get lucky to get through this one. And I do have a great start on the next try. The bulbs attack Corpse Flower first, and Butternut is able to heal him. But then they whack Butternut with a Bush Basher, dropping her to critical health, and a massive Bush Basher takes her out. Potato's next attack, though, defeats the first bulb. So I go wild with magic again, and fortunately, Corpse Flower is able to finish off the final bulb with one more spell. And this brings us to Marcy. And the big challenge with Marcy is that when she hits critical health, she can freeze my characters. So my goal, if at all possible, is to deal a ton of damage near the end of the battle and not let this little shit's shenanigans get in my way. I build up some element levels, and for some reason, Marcy is completely focused on mashing potatoes, but eventually I'm able to cast some magic. Sadly though, an Arrow Saucer from Potato causes Marcy to take a knee, and her other knee goes directly into Butternut's balls. And by that I mean she takes Butternut out with an ice blast. But then Marcy's knees make an unprompted error. She cures herself instead of attacking. This will be a theme throughout this challenge. And in this case, it's just the opening I need to heal Corpse Flower and bring me back into it. And at this point, Marcy chokes, using less powerful spells that just don't have the ability to take out my crunchy veggies. So with a final Arrow Saucer, Potato Potatoes, and victory is mine. And that means it's time for my munchies to macerate this carnivorous kitty. Unlike in my other challenges, though, we have pretty ample healing, so I don't think this one will be too bad. I let Butternut start things off since the field effect starts out partially yellow, meaning she gets some increased damage. And initially, Lynx's offense doesn't seem too scary. A couple spells later, though, things get nasty. And let me explain why. The first time a character casts a spell on Lynx, he casts Imbecile on them to lower their magic attack. And if that character casts a second time, Lynx gets angry and uses Hell Soul, which has a chance of instant death. And Corpse Flower casts twice, which means... Oh no, don't die. Oh no, don't die. No! But despite that setback, I power through. And because the green element has the heal spell available, I'm able to run away. Command inputs are easily doubled on this remaster, and this happens a fair number of times through this run, so we're going to skip it from now on, but just know that I was suffering. On my second first try, I avoid the Hell Soul deaths pretty effectively, and Corpse Flower's Arrow Saucer goes crazy. And I realize a strategy here. By having two characters use elements in a row, I can force Lynx to use Imbecile on only one of them. And when he uses Imbecile, even though he's technically reacting, it doesn't count as a counterattack. That means he'll do less physical damage. And this means Corpse Flower is free to use oh, Butternut is dead. And so is Potato. And Corpse Flower is now a corpse. So I die. But I shift my strategy again. And by that I mean I literally hadn't equipped all of my possible spells, and I could have made things a lot easier, so I do that and we head into my third first try. And I pretty quickly run away, this time on purpose. But my fourth first try, I managed to double up on Arrow Saucers, and then I even get a triple off before Lynx can act. And Lynx casts Imbecile on Potato, the best possible outcome. Though it kind of makes no sense since Potato didn't use an offensive element. I triple up on another set of Arrow Saucers, and Corpse Flower manages a fourth before Lynx can act. But when he does, he uses Gravitone instead of Imbecile, which sadly kills Potato. And while I do manage to lay down a bunch more damage, Lynx heals with a Nostrum, undoing my hard work, which means eventually I peace out. So my fifth first try, Lynx somehow uses Hellbound, an even stronger single target death spell, taking out Corpse Flower, and then he immediately uses it a second time, mashing Potato. And even though he's at critical health, he's able to easily squash Butternut. And my sixth first try is equally frustrating. I was so close! Ah! The seventh first try is gonna be nope. No, it's not. The eighth first try reveals that when the enemy uses an instant death attack, they get a 100% success rate. And the ninth, nope again. But on my 10th first try, Lynx finally misses a Hellbound attack. That gives me a chance to strike back. Lynx uses Hell Soul on Potato though. Hell Soul, miss. Please miss, please miss, please, 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 please. Yes! And since Lynx is at low health now, I go on full offense to force instant death spells and prevent healing. And Lynx takes the bait and uses Hellbound on Potato. Okay, just... Even if this hits, like I still have a chance. But it didn't freaking hit. Now though, I'm out of elements, so I just have to whack as hard as I can and hope Lynx doesn't heal. So after a bajillion piddly diddly strikes, oh, we did it! Oh my freaking god, I hate that battle so much right now. With Lynx temporarily incapacitated and Belle Pep poisoned, it's time to abandon her so we can recruit a hot dude. But not before Matcha lends us her boat. Once again, don't buy a boat, but borrowing one is fine. And clearly Glenn feels the same way, which means we can now recruit him and name him Kumquat, which by the way is my favorite kind of quat. And Matcha also joins the party, becoming Okra. And finally, Greco puts an end to this recruitment marathon, becoming Tomato. And while it's amazing to now have one green character in Kumquat, a second would be incredible. So I head to the Hydra Marshes, fight a couple of goblins, grab the Life Sparkle, and hightail it back to Viper Manor. And back in the very courtyard where Belle Pep was poisoned, I use the Life Sparkle on the central flower. And in a fascinating turn of events, Lucia is ready to womansplain the flower to me, despite the fact that I just did the thing that she's womansplaining. But anyway, this brings Neofio to life, and this flowery bundle of joy becomes Sprout. So with our party now fully fully fleshed out, and my cat intensely annoyed that I'm lifting her, I take my new boat to this distressed island, which means it's time for a battle with Harl, or Harley, whatever. And with two green characters who both can use their most powerful attacks, she quickly falls. But before we can pursue her along with Lynx, we need to head into the fog and fight some pirates. The initial battle with the skeletons is no problem, but then we fight Polly. And Kumquat's attacks are hugely powerful compared to the love taps we've been dishing out previously. And we also now have access to heal all elements, making everything easier, since we now can heal the entire team with one move. So Polly goes down and yields another star level. Fargo then throws himself upon our swords, and I go all in on offense, which is pretty effective, particularly since Fargo focuses his offense exclusively on tubers. And once the starch is boiled, Kumquat slices up this meddlesome maritimer, yielding one more star. Sadly though, our vegetables are now in danger of being zombified, so I take a small detour to save a small pip, whom I name Persimmon, and I pursue the big zombie blob. It uses Diminish pretty quickly, having element damage, and that suits me just fine. Kumquat's physical attacks will do more damage anyway, assuming he can hit. The big blob goes to critical health relatively quickly, and while I do need to top off my health, my efficacious endives cut this blob down to size with devastating swiftness, ending my foray into this frigate. What did I call me? I just said frigate. I called myself a frigate. With my maritime mischief concluded, Belle Pep's moldy malady is mysteriously mended, and the doctor who watched over her becomes Oak. But before we head into Fort Dragonia to chase the clown and the kitty, we need to head to Water Dragon Isle. There, the dwarves have taken over and they want to fight. They open with a hi-ho chorus.
What you call me, bitch?
This deals respectable damage given it's yellow and my characters are green. But once my turn comes, Kumquat gets to work. I go after the Daffy dwarfs first because if I leave them alone, they'll get access to powerful spells. So he kills one of them with 2 physical attacks and brings a second one down to low HP with a physical attack and a bush basher. Then Sprout is able to finish it off right after and then take out a second on her turn. And because I played aggressively, the dwarves can no longer use hi-ho chorus. I go after a Daggy dwarf next and Kumquat heals the party rather than taking it out. But on his next turn, he's able to pop off. And with the field effect now green, he takes out another with an enormous bush basher. And with a final flourish, Sprout defeats the final dwarf handily. Well, actually Branchly, since she doesn't have hands. But you know what else doesn't have hands?
Oh, I don't like this experience.
The tank that I have to fight next. It comes with 2 assistants. 2 right-hand men, if you will. So Kumquat defeats one immediately, and then we pursue El Tank. It immediately uses a yellow element shot, but fortunately that shot hits Potato. And after whacking it a few more times, it uses a physical attack against Kumquat, but it only deals about 50% of his health, so I keep on fighting. It uses guns to hit the entire team, taking out Potato, but I heal all, and the entire field is green.
Okay.
Which is great because the tank's attacks are now weakened and mine are strengthened. But then things take a turn for the worse. The tank uses a blue element shot, which hits Kumquat and freezes him, temporarily making him unable to move. So now my job is to heal and wait. Sadly though, the tank takes out Kumquat on the next turn with an attack, and I gotta run. On the second try, the tank uses a green element shot to start, which isn't nearly as punishing. I take out both dwarves, and then the tank uses high res to raise its physical attack. But its next attack is red element shot, and this attack confuses Kumquat, and he attacks Potato with a bush basher. But I persevere, and Kumquat also perseveres in casting bush basher on Potato again, taking him out. Fortunately though, the tank hits him right after that, removing the confusion, but also killing him, which means I'm running again. Try number 3 starts pretty successfully, and the tank uses a black element shot. This takes out Potato, but leaves everyone else unscathed. But then I get shot at twice by the tank. So try number 4. Blue element shot hits Potato, which is great luck since that takes the heat off the greens. The side dwarves go down next, and then I hit with more green elements as the tank goes for high res. It then fires a white element shot at Sprout, which does not kill, and I have Kumquat use a bush basher, but then Sprout is able to heal herself, which allows her to escape death from the next gun barrage, and Kumquat heals the party afterward. The tank targets Kumquat next with the black element shot, which means it's time to wreck it and heal again. The tank then bounces back to target Sprout with a black element shot, but she survives it and heals again, only to get hit by a green element shot soon after, which she also survives. And 2 more attacks by Kumquat are enough to finish off the tank and show one of the cutest death scenes in RPG history. Look at that little dwarf launch into the air. That's so cute. So with the tank dead, we head to the water dragon to acquire the ice breath, which will be very useful as we head through Mount Pyre. Our vegetables are once again feeling a bit unseasoned, so they could really use some salt and pepper. Sadly though, they took a dip in the lava, meaning we start the fight against the Sons of Seasoning with 1 HP. Fortunately though, they're dumb.
You're dumb.
That means Sprout is able to heal the team, and I'm feeling pretty safe. And given that they're not only dumb but also yellow innate, Kumquat is able to finish off Salt with a dash and gash. And with the field effect now green, it only takes 2 turns for my characters to pummel Pepor. The next battle with the Fire Dragon, while normally pretty awful in these challenges, is actually a bit of relief. My red and yellow challenges had next to no healing. And in my blue challenge, attacking with elements stimulated massive counters that wrecked my characters. But this time, none of those things are true. But what is true that on the remaster, while using speed up, sometimes the controller inputs are doubled. Like this time, where a double up command causes my characters to run away by accident. I think I said that before. Maybe it wasn't accidental before. I think I meant to write it only here. I don't know what's happening, guys. But on the second try, I focused most of my stamina on casting elements. The Fire Dragon casts a lot of red elements, and this powers up his already strong physical attacks. But even so, the dragon initially focuses his attacks on Potato, meaning my mean greens are free to intervene. And once the field effect is mostly green, Kumquat's Gash and Dash does respectable damage, though surprisingly not much more than his magic attacks. So within a couple minutes, Sprout vine whips the dragon into the ground, propelling us into the actual fort. Except wait a minute, there's one more battle with the 3 Dragoon Devas, Zoa, Marcy, and Karsh. I pursue Zoa first because he's yellow elemental and I want to take as few hits from his attacks as possible, and Sprout's Bush Basher brings him to critical health on my second turn of the battle. Kumquat finishes him off soon after. Marcy is my next target since she can freeze my characters, but I heal up before I try to gun her down. Karsh uses a Dragon Rider attack in a last-ditch attempt to stop me, but he's pitifully weak compared to my pungent plantain, so he can't protect Marcy from my wrath. And with her down, Karsh is wilted lettuce. More lettuce to come later. And Fort Dragonia is going down. Fort Dragonia has 4 sections, and fortunately the red and yellow sections have no boss fight. The blue quadrant, however, has been infested by a giant blobby dude. Sadly, he takes almost no physical damage, but I have plenty of magic available. Worse though, he has the ability to freeze my characters, and he freezes Kumquat on his very first take-in attack. I heal to stay safe, but the blob then uses Blue Field, which, as you might guess, turns the field effect blue. Since this will strengthen Blobby's attack, I have no choice but to negate it with a spell from Sprout. Fortunately though, Kumquat thaws and I'm able to start hacking away. His magic also does impressive damage and the battle is looking significantly less scary. Blobby uses an Ice Blast next, but it hits Potato, leaving my other seedy soldiers safe. And a final Bush Basher is enough to melt this menace. But the next boss will be a bit more complicated. Taurusoid. And as a green innate boss, it's going to be extremely difficult to damage her. I think it's a her. It's a giant cow. Wait, Taurus is a bull. Okay, it's a dude. Fortunately though, Taurusoid strikes Potato with its first strike, so I have a second chance. Kumquat though makes up for Sprout's incompetence with some reasonable numbers. He then casts the Tornado Trap because I've heard this boss can use that spell even though I've never personally seen it. What I ultimately notice though is that Taurusoid is out to pasture, unable to do much damage even with his strongest attacks. Even better, for some reason, I thought the boss would absorb green elements, and he does not. He actually takes huge damage from an arrow blaster, a level 4 element that I grabbed in this very dungeon. Then a bush basher from Kumquat hits hard, and I take a chance on Sprout's level 3 tech, Slurp Slurp, which is useful because it also heals her. But ultimately, Sprout's low damage means I relegate her to a support role. I now have access to the Eagle Eye element, which basically guarantees a character will hit with all of their attacks. She casts it on Kumquat, and that means he can use his strongest attacks with no downside, and he can hit hard with elements more frequently as well. And with this newfound consistency, he's able to demolish Taurusoid with a final bush basher. And now that I've demolished Big Bull, we set our sights on the sun. Well, actually the son of a gun. And this guy is nasty. He can put my team to sleep, nuke their stamina recovery, and just generally make my life very bad. And one thing I didn't realize, he has 365 HP. Clever, Square Enix. Clever. Unfortunately, that low HP means my attacks deal very little damage because his defense has been jacked up to 11, and magic does even less. And Kumquat's dash and gash feels pretty weak as well, but it's better than Sprout's shit. But now Son of a Gun uses Kissy Wissy on Sprout, which inflicts the sleep status. But as you might expect, this leaves Kumquat open to deal massive damage. And his arrow blaster does 85 damage, which is about a fifth of this boss's life total. But the boss then wisens up and Kissy Wissy's Kumquat next, meaning my main damage dealer is now Sleepy Weepy. But Sprout holds her own, slurping up some health before she gets Kissy Wissied as well, which means all I can do now is wait. And the Son of a Gun attacks Sprout first, waking her from her slumber. Unfortunately though, the Son of a Gun refuses to attack Kumquat, so I just stall for more time, healing until things change. And they do change when the Son of a Gun casts Photon Beam on Kumquat, and then casts a Meteor Shower on the entire team. And since these attacks are magical and not physical, he remains asleep but now needs healing desperately, until he wakes up spontaneously, which means it's time to wreck with a 4 damage Bush Basher. Help! But with great patience and massive frustration, Kumquat eventually finishes off the boss with a physical attack. And that leaves just one more boss before we can ascend the tower, the Bunyip. Its initial form is Retinate, and its attacks are not too threatening. But after a few turns of attacking, it gives mouth birth to its true self, a black innate Cyclops who has a ton of ways to make my life miserable. But it attacks Potato first, which means I am unconcerned. At first, which means Kumquat can go ham. And luckily, Bunyip casts its free fall spell on Potato next, meaning my characters have dodged the biggest bullet. And then it finally gets around to using its Devil Thunder spell, and my characters are strong enough to basically ignore it. So I let Kumquat dump some massive attacks into this guy, but then it wisens up to my strategy and bops him, bringing his health way too low for me to be comfortable. Sprout is ready with healing magic though, as well as an Eagle Eye to make Kumquat more consistent. It futilely uses Devil Thunder again, and a few more attacks are enough to poke this guy in the eyeball. And now, our verdant explorers are ready to open the door at the top of the tower. Before my fight with the feline, a yellow snake wants to spar, Viper. But Viper has a huge problem. He's yellow innate. That means the best strategy is to immediately cast Eagle Eye on Kumquat, and then let him whack with perfect accuracy. And because Viper is yellow, my healing both boosts my damage and lowers his. He uses G-Force on Potato, but even unequipped, he takes minimal damage. But Kumquat's Arrow Blaster shows him what's what, and after a series of unfortunate misses from Sprout, a single sword swipe from Kumquat is enough to come kill him. But the ferocious feline is ready to follow up, and he does not like my vicious veggies at all. But the strategy is the same. Sprout casts Eagle Eye on Kumquat, and he will take it from there. A glide hook from Lynx chunks Sprout a respectable amount, but he makes a poor choice on his next attack, taking out Potato. And this means Sprout is able to reclaim her lost HP with a Slurp Slurp, and ultimately reapplies Eagle Eye. And rather than heal, I just have Kumquat attack, which definitely was a bad idea. Uh-oh. Whoa! 1 HP! But that 1 remaining HP is the window I need to heal. And after a few more attacks, he's at critical health, so Kumquat kills the kitty on his next turn. After Potato bulks up, he finds, as many pet owners often do, that he has become his cat, which for a starch is definitely unusual. But another odd thing that's actually relevant to this challenge is that we actually get a green character right away, Sprig, whom I named Time. Unfortunately though, Time has a bit of a problem. While most characters have expansive element grids that allow them to equip over a dozen spells at this point, Time's is not like that. She gets 2 elements and she gets the Doppelganger ability. This ability allows her to transform into generic monsters, and while it's been hugely useful in expanding my roster to include rarer color types at this point in the game, for this challenge it serves a different purpose. But before we explore that, I recruit Harl and call her Catnip. And then we head to the swamp to fight some Biba. The battle is easy and it yields the Biba flute, which I'll need later. And by later, I mean now, because I use it to summon a Wingipede, another easy battle. But I let Time get the last hit on it, meaning she adds the Wingipede to her doppelgang list. But then we're assaulted by the vegetable of the hour, Radius. And unfortunately for Time, Radius is green innate, meaning her damage against him is piddly diddly. But by transforming Time into our newly acquired Wingipede, I can grant her a huge boost. But actually, the boost isn't that big, and the Wingipede's damage sucks, so I'm not sure this was a great idea.
This was my moment.
But at least it doesn't take that much damage from Radius's long shot, so I've got that going for me. Unfortunately though, Radius immediately dumps his next photon beam into our winged beast, so things are looking dire. So rather than stay in this form, I just have Time revert to her base form, which doesn't matter because Radius immediately uses an Inferno and I die. On try number 2 though, I don't even bother transforming. And Radius seems to be playing along. He uses his long shot tech on Catnip and his photon beam on the pretty kitty, leaving Time free to heal. That way, Time can survive the Inferno and then whack Radius with her big stick. Radius then takes out Lynx and Time does some more whacking and healing. And after a few more strikes, Radius is at critical health. He uses his next tech on Catnip and Time has to defend because her stamina is low. But then Radius takes out Catnip with a photon beam. And since Time is out of healing, this is her last chance to make an impact. She misses her first strike, hits her second, and hits her third, and Radius is defeated. And thankfully, with his defeat, he joins the party, becoming Radish. With Radish now a part of my party, I get to work creating an incredibly diverse lineup of spells for him. I recruit Zappa next, and he becomes Pumpkin.
Bye, Pumpkin.
He also yields the Smith Spirit, which will allow my party to craft weapons without going to the blacksmith. Huge! And then Vaughn joins, becoming Lettuce. And he gives us nothing. Huge! But he's green innate, and he has a boomerang, which makes him a crucial addition to my team, because he can attack all enemies with his fierce attack, and with Eagle Eye, he'll get perfect accuracy. Huge! And finally, we recruit Norris, who becomes Squash, and he gives us a boat. Huge! Don't buy a boat though, especially not a huge one. In preparation for the battles to come, I grab the star fragment at the bottom of the ocean, and then I head to White Dragon Isle. There, we're assaulted by the boy in the bubble, Megastarky, and with my new boomerang boy along with an Eagle Eye assist, the damage is pretty high and very consistent. Bubble Boy's meteor shower comes out though, and it deals some good damage and also causes the fatigue status on Lettuce. This will make him use more stamina with each move. But he's able to heal the team, and Megastarky follows suit, taking out Lynx with the next set of attacks. But he's at critical health, and a few more attacks are enough to dispatch him, recruit him to our Rutabaga Bodega, and name him Birch Please. And with that, the main plotline continues. We head to a ship to request some new planters from Fargo number 2, we head to Marbule to meet up with a timid mermaid, and then we gamble away our boat. Didn't need it anyway. But since we're stuck on another boat without it, we get transformed into cats, unrig the gambling machine, and win back our sailing vessel. And even better, we can now fight the Marbule Sage. And this fight is hilariously simple. The mechanic of this fight is that the Sage only physically attacks unless you use a spell against him. In that case, he'll turn the tables on you by transforming you into a different innate with a turn element and then blast you with the opposite element. But if you just use physical attacks, he will do the same. So we Eagle Eye Lettuce, heal when necessary, and then I try to destroy him with an Arrow Blaster, so So the Sage uses Turn Green followed by an Upheaval, but it's too little too late, and Radish ends things with another spell, yielding the Hermit Crab, which gives us access to the Dead Sea. Well, almost, because our path is blocked by a giant red chef's knife, and the only way to neutralize it is to fight the knife's owner, Garai. And this may be the hardest fight in the game. That being said, my strategy remains largely the same. Eagle Eye Lettuce and cast green elements to neutralize the field effect for Garai's attacks, and fortunately his first Will Breaker hits Lynx, sparing my plant-based pals. But my excitement is short-lived. No! No! And I die. The Will Breaker on my next try immediately kills Lettuce, and on the next try. But on the next try, I find out that Radish is not one-hit KO'd by Will Breaker. That gives me a through line. Sadly though, I'm not healed enough for the next Will Breaker, and he goes down. And while I try in vain to save the battle with Lettuce, a triple cut takes him out too. And I die. But I have one final thing to try before I give up. I head out to fight some generic monsters. The reason I do this is because of Chrono Cross's level up system. It's kind of weird. Each time a star battle is completed, characters gain various stats. The chance of each stat going up is semi-random, but each character has a sort of baseline stat distribution that raises the chance of certain stats going up. But star levels aren't the only time stats go up. After each star, a mini star level becomes available, and it can be obtained by completing a certain number of battles, and it gives the same stat boost as a normal star level. And on this occasion, Lettuce and Radish both gain strength and physical resistance from their star level, which I think will be extremely helpful as we head back into Garai. Oh, and I also equip Radish with a Mithril helmet, which I should have done before. And I also snuggle my cat for good luck. Look at her little face. Look at her.
I feel very attacked!
So Garai, he takes out Radish with physical attacks almost immediately. On the next try, things go better. Garai hits Lynx with his first Will Breaker, and with his second, he attacks Lettuce. But with his newly gained resistance, he's able to survive the strike. But I play too risky, and he gets slashed up. But after 1.5 million more fails, RNG throws me a bone. Garai kills Lynx before the first Will Breaker, but Lettuce is able to face tank it. I play aggressively, and Radish is able to tank the next one. And crucially, Garai misses his next attack against Lettuce. And after another Arrow Blaster, Garai's HP is now critical. And by the way, that miss was critical because Garai hits a nasty 3-hit combo on Lettuce next, but it's not quite enough to kill him. And Radish survives the next Will Breaker. So with one final Arrow Blaster, Lettuce is able to take down Garai and propel us past this miserable man, and straight into a fight with Highwayman, who is less dead, more robotic, but just as miserable, and hopefully a little bit easier than that last one. More of the same to start. Eagle Eye followed by some physical attacks from Lettuce. I leave Lettuce to damage the big robot, and I let Radish do the healing. Sadly though, the big bad bot known hereafter as the BBB uses its exhaust gas ability. This inflicts the blind status on my greens, which as you probably guessed, prevents them from hitting effectively. Not that it matters, since BBB's rampage ability takes out Lettuce before he gets to attack again, and the second time. The third time though, it hits Lynx instead, giving me an actual chance to fight. And since the BBB will eventually rampage again, I once again just try to damage him as fast as possible. And by the way, while blind is awful for my characters, it's somewhat glitched. It not only prevents my characters from landing their attacks on the enemy, but it also prevents the enemy from landing hits on me. Glitchy, but welcome. And even better, the BBB rampages at Radish on his next go-round, and it doesn't kill him. And then it one-shots Lettuce one cycle later. So basically, I hate my life, but I do notice that the BBB is on his last legs, even though he doesn't have legs. So I try to finish him off with an Arrow Blaster. And the result is that I die. Ultimately, I decide to grind up for a mini-star. My hope is that I'll get some sort of stat increase that allows Lettuce to survive a rampage. And ultimately, the mini-star nets him some resistance and magic resistance, which honestly is pretty welcome in this situation. But alas, my Lettuce fucks around and the find out phase still one-shots him. So I give it another shot and just hope for the best. The first rampage hits Radish and leaves him alive, which is is great. I then cleanse the black element from the field effect by healing, using Eagle Eye on Radish, and healing again. This means Radish's Arrow Blaster does massive damage, and so too does Lettuce's. And in a stroke of luck, the next Exhaust Gas completely misses Lettuce, which means that he's free to miss his next attack even without being impaired. Thanks, broski. But the next Rampage attack hits Lynx, meaning Radish can refresh Lettuce's Eagle Eye effect. His next Arrow Blaster brings the BBB down to critical health, and Radish is able to finish him off with another massive spell. And while the BBB is now busted, there's gonna be plenty more suffering as I sashay through this sea. Before moving on, I take a moment to gain another precious mini-star, with great results. But there's something even more important that I need to take care of. The Tragediens in this wreck of an area are weird enemies. They each can use one element in battle, and they announce what they plan to use at the very beginning of it. And let me interrupt myself for just 1 second to say that hat says DBAB, don't buy a boat. It's not the other kind of red hat, guys. And in my very first battle with the Tragediens, one of them announces that she will use Tornado, which is huge, because not only is Tornado a ginormously powerful level 6 green element, it is also trappable. So I cast my trap, wait for it to cast Tornado so I can trap it, and repeat. And then once I've had my fill, I run and start the encounter again. And wouldn't you know it, the next battle also has a Windy Woman. So I repeat the process until I have 9 Tornado spells. And with that, I'm ready to start the battle with the nemesis of every Chrono Cross challenge, Miguel. This battle essentially has 2 phases. In the first phase, Miguel starts by casting the useless anti-black spell, and that gives me a chance to hit big with a Tornado. He then uses a Strong-Minded, raising his magic defense. And at this point, I really have to change the field effect, and ideally I do it twice, because his next move will always be Weak-Minded, followed immediately by Holy Dragon Sword, which can potentially kill a character, but it doesn't this time because it hits Radish. And I forgot to mention, when I fought Harl earlier at the island thingy, the burned down one, I got really lucky because she dropped the moon glasses. These are the only reason that Radish is not dying. It reduces all damage inflicted on the wearer by 25%. Completely broken item, and really happy I got it. Anyway, I scramble to heal and do as much damage as possible, which doesn't matter because in a repeat of the last battle, his next one hits Lettuce and one-shots him. I get the same start on the next attempt, but this time Miguel wrecks a Lynx instead, meaning I now actually have a chance. I get an Eagle Eye onto Lettuce and let him go to town with physical attacks, but then Miguel shatters my plans and wilts my Lettuce once again, and we're starting over again. Lynx goes down immediately on try number 4, and Radish absorbs the next Holy Dragon Sword. Sadly though, I get a little too aggressive and forget to heal, launching Miguel into phase 2. And in this phase, he just dumps on my characters with a huge meteor shower, taking out Radish. But given I've gotten this far, I have Lettuce heal himself to see if he can take on Miguel's next spell, Holy Light. And while he does survive the spell and heal, he's now fatigued. That means he'll spend extra stamina with each action. And while I do hit Miguel as hard as I can with a Tornado, it's not enough. Miguel chops up my Lettuce with his sword, and I die. So after another set of vegetables goes rotten and another is found to be contaminated with sword bacteria, I find myself about to eat a Holy Dragon Sword with little hope. So I take a chance on a tech I've literally never used: Wet Paint, and it turns the field effect all green. That means Holy Dragon Sword doesn't kill Radish, and I'm able to heal off the damage very quickly. So now, near full health, one more whack from Radish brings Miguel to critical health, and he unleashes Meteor Shower. But this time, both Lettuce and Radish survive, and I can heal. Miguel then unleashes Holy Light right on schedule. But again, both characters survive, which means Miguel's cycle is starting over again, which means I now need to do as much damage as possible. Lettuce attacks, Radish attacks, Radish hits a huge Tornado, and Lettuce heals off the Holy Light damage. So Miguel uses a Strong-Minded and once again prepares to chop my salad. But with a final Tornado, Lettuce destroys Miguel, putting an end to what thus far has been the worst battle of this challenge. With the world's most effective salad slicer destroyed, I take a moment to gather more greens, specifically Irene's, who is looking rather like kelp. I also scoop up Snef, who smells an awful lot like garlic. But these acquisitions pale in comparison to my next one, the absolute gigashard Karsh, my sweet, sweet Ambrosia. And he immediately replaces Radish in my party because that's just correct. But sadly, another creature is intent on ingesting my precious veggies, a giant buggy named Rochester. And for once, there's not much to talk about since with Ambrosia axing all the questions, he gets stomped in under a minute. Following is the Hell Chef, who aims to blanch us. And here my tactics shift. Lettuce's physical attacks are pitiful compared to Ambrosia's, so now he's the one casting Eagle Eye and Ambrosia is the one who will do the whacking. Because holy hell, look at those massive damage numbers. Lettuce does contribute with magic damage though. But once Ambrosia attacks again, this chef is cooked. And given that he's so hot, he joins our team and becomes Cayenne. And listen, my boyfriend already made fun of me for that pronunciation, and you're welcome to do the same, because this guy's not joining our party. And someone else who is not joining our active party is this robot right here, whom we have to fight next. And with our new strategy of having Lettuce act as support for Ambrosia, things are feeling pretty comfortable. Grobik's haircutter tech barely leaves a scratch on my tender veggies, and eventually he uses Vigora, an element that temporarily gives him unlimited stamina. To be safe, I have both characters defend, and his attacks once again leave my healthful hunks virtually unscathed. But then I get careless. That leads to a close call for Ambrosia, but fortunately he's able to heal up before another set of robo punches, and he has yet another close call. But I go for broke and have Lettuce use Arrow Blaster, and with that, this meddling machine is massacred. But where one machine goes, another one follows. But funny story, this one is yellow innate, meaning every spell I cast will weaken it, and Ambrosia's attacks, even when weakened by yellow field effects, do completely ridiculous damage. And I didn't realize it, but Ambrosia's innate strength is not the only reason for this. Ambrosia is holding a stone axe. And stone weapons have a special property. Any strong attacks with stone weapons against mechanical enemies are automatically critical hits. So within seconds, this mechanoid menace expires. And while it does chase us down for a rematch, that is no issue. And after seeing the dominance of organic produce, a beautiful black cyborg joins our team, T-Now. Those who were with me live, you know why. Everyone else? I'll tell you when you're Redlow. But for now, there's Riddell, who becomes Bamboo, and her daddy, who becomes Cornichon, and a pirate who is bequeathed tobacco. Don't smoke, kids.
Just don't do it, promise?
And finally, our handsome helmeted himbo, who becomes Dirt. With my technical troubles settled, we now have some reptilian rabble to wreck, and we'll start by taking a ride on the giant wingipede to Gaia's navel. And we come here first because of a new tool we can acquire. By fighting these spidery diteries, setting a trap, and letting the field go completely green, I can capture the Sonya summon. This element is going to provide a huge boost to my power level, and something else that we'll talk about later. And as a sweet bonus, Ambrosia gets a huge mini-star level after the battle. So after fighting a million more spiders, some of which I kill with my new butterfly lady, this boss bitch dinosaur rears her ugly head. I take down her bird-brained friend first, but after that, it's on to the big girl. And this boss provided no difficulty at all, which is good because the next boss is actually quite a spectacle. The Green Dragon, as you might guess, is a green element specialist. She not only uses exclusively green elements, but she also absorbs them. And even worse, if the field effect goes completely green, she uses the carnivore element. But this plays perfectly into my prep, because I have a ton of carnivore traps. So once the field is green, I throw out my first one, and Mommy takes the bait and immediately casts carnivore, giving my very first level 5 green element. The problem, though, is that I don't do much damage, and my stamina gets drained super quick, meaning she sometimes gets to cast the spell free of charge and hit me with it. And while it doesn't do too much damage to a cast of green characters, the damage will definitely build up. But of course, my healing is also strengthened by the green field effect, so it's pretty trivial to keep pace. Or at least that's what I think until Ambrosia misses an attack at a critical moment. That leads to the dragon hitting a huge carnivore, bringing Lettuce down to 4 HP. Still though, I heal, and I see a through line. Lettuce is able to deal enough damage to bring the dragon to critical HP, and this causes her to heal instead of casting another carnivore, which gives me the breathing room I need to attack to build up element levels, cast a carnivore trap, trap, deal some more damage, and set another. Which is good because immediately after Lettuce sets that trap, the dragon uses Carnivore. But with Ambrosia out of element levels, all he can do is heal, so that both characters can face tank the next Chompy. And after Lettuce casts one more trap, I realize only Ambrosia has Carnivore traps remaining. And actually, just one Carnivore trap, which he uses expeditiously. So on his next turn, he attacks and heals so they can both face tank the next one. But I have one more trick up my sleeve. I have Lettuce use his wet paint ability, and this paint changes the field effect to all red, which means the dragon can't use Carnivore on her next turn. Instead, she changes the field effect to green with a green field spell to prep for the next turn. But that small delay is the opening I need to let Ambrosia attack and fell the beast. So 5 dragons remain, and Leah becomes Pia. The blue dragon is my next challenge, but challenge is kind of a strong word, because with Eagle Eye and Ambrosia's gargantuan strikes, the fight initially feels pretty manageable. Even the dragon's most powerful element during this battle, Deluge, does pitiful damage compared to what Greenie could do, so the knockout with a tornado is an inevitability. And yellow seems the ideal next target. Because his element is the opposite of my character's, I can once again weaken him by just playing the normal way, casting all of my green elements, which very quickly down this dummy. The red dragon, though, is no slouch. He starts in his baby form, and I Eagle Eye Ambrosia and attack to kick things off. And we start phase 2 with the field mostly green. It's a slow start because I'm low on stamina, but eventually the field goes all green and I fire off a nasty tornado. The dragon blasts back with a fire breath next, but the damage isn't looking too bad. But later in the battle, I make a big mistake, defending when I should have gone hard on damage. No! That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to use to... But after healing, a few more attacks from Ambrosia and a tornado from Lettuce somehow don't kill? Wow, this guy is tanky. But Ambrosia is able to bop him to bits shortly thereafter. Ambrosia gets yet another strength point, and there are just 2 more dragons to go. Before I head to the black dragon, though, I watch a dance party. Because without doing that, the black dragon will stay asleep, and I'll miss out on a star level and another important item, which we'll talk about later. But once that's done, I head to his lair to fight. Eagle Eye on Ambrosia, whack, 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 massive critical hit, and marvel at the dragon's puny damage numbers. Which means there's not much more to say, but he died. Which leaves just one more lizard, the big white one. And you already know how it starts. And funny story, the white dragon's damage seems even lower than the black dragon's. But then he uses Magnify, which increases the damage elements do by 50%. But the dragon doesn't use any elements initially. Instead, he just uses Holy Healing to negate some of my damage. Heal that hole, but with the Magnify boost he put into place, I'm doing a ton of extra damage with my spells. But there is danger, namely a Holy Breath that deals 2/3 of my veggie's health. But I'm easily able to heal it off and keep whacking. The dragon, though, starts prepping for something huge, using Weak-Minded on Lettuce. But before he can make good on his threat, Ambrosia topples him with a final axe swing. And with 6 dragons defeated, we can finally become every villain's worst nightmare. Oh, I totally forgot we recruited Stina here. She ruined my bit. I called her Lotus. Okay, let's try that again. With 6 dragons defeated, we can finally become... God damn it, we have to fight Dark Surge. And this battle actually might present a challenge. Eagle Eye, Double Whack, Eagle Eye, more attacks, Feral Cats, wreck my shit, heal it off, hit, hit, hit. But okay, then shit gets real and Dark Surge hits hard with a volcano. And after healing that off, Forever Zero comes out to wreck my shit. But it isn't that bad. But I gotta heal or he'll just wreck me with his black hole. But unexpectedly, he goes for a tornado instead, which isn't anything special considering he's using green on green. But crazy enough, his tornado turned the entire field effect green, which is crazy luck. And after I build up some element levels with attacks, Dark Surge does not use any elements. This means Lettuce is free to use my Sonya summon to deal massive damage. But he's not quite dead, so I heal. But rather than using Black Hole like I feared, he uses Thunderstorm. And with the field all green, its power is completely nerfed. and one final tornado is enough to take him out on the first try. The actual first try this time, not like the 10th first try from before. So with 6 dragons and Dark Surge defeated, oh my god, look at that cute little dragon. You could even say he's a snapdragon. Wait, where was I? With 6 dragons defeated, 1 snapdragon recruited, Dark Surge satiated, and all interruptions out of the way, our furry kitty becomes a terrifying tuber. Terrifying. With Ferocious Feline now transformed into a putrid potato, we have access to all previously acquired plant life. And that means lettuce is no more, and I can finally return to Kumquat dominance. But interestingly, when I compare Kumquat and Ambrosia's stats, Ambrosia's are better in almost every way, which is hilarious. Kumquat, however, has access to the legendary sword Einlancer, which will massively increase his damage. I also head back to Marbule and buy the Master Hammer, because with this hammer and 2 blacksmiths, I can now forge rainbow equipment. Each piece of rainbow equipment, though, requires 6 shiny materials and a rainbow shell to make. I've been using the Sonia summon to acquire shiny leaves for this process. I told you we would circle back to it, and that has made things a bit easier. However, in order to get the rest, I have to dismantle the colored charms I've been acquiring throughout the game. Sadly, though, even after doing that, I'm still missing the shiny dew and shiny sand, so I'll have to come back for those later. But there is another way to power up my plants, and it's in the Isle of the Damned. By fighting Salt and Pepor here, I can grab Ambrosia's level 7 technique, Axiomatic. Easy battle though, so I'm not going to talk about it. But one battle that will not be easy is the battle with Dario, because for this battle, Bamboo must be in the party. That means that this battle will be an Ambrosia solo. Fortunately though, this battle has a little trick. Well, okay, the first trick is to get lucky and have him kill Bamboo first. But after that, using any element on him will cause him to counter with an element of the opposite color, and using a green element will cause him to use low res rather than attacking. But unfortunately, using an element also depletes Ambrosia's stamina. That means my only choice for my next action is to have my potato defend. That means that Dario gets another action and he chooses to dash and gash Ambrosia, which is really bad. But the plan doesn't change, and Dario peels some potatoes next, leaving Ambrosia alone. And for the first time since before the dragons, I die. Wait, did I die during one of the dragon fights? I don't remember. I don't think I did. This one is gonna require a bit of luck. Basically, I have to use 0 elements initially and hope he attacks the other 2 party members, which does not happen. And on Dario's second turn, he once again goes after Ambrosia with Dash and Gash, which almost kills him. And then he uses Sonic Sword on Ambrosia right after. Bad news. But after that, he physically attacks Bamboo and she survives. And he Dash and Gashes her soon after. And then right after that, he develops a taste for taters, and he juliennes him on his next turn. So now, with only Ambrosia left, the rhythm changes, because now, every time Ambrosia uses an element, he gets all of his stamina back and can cause Dario to use low res. I hit 3 times, I use an element, Dario uses low res, and then I repeat. So because I have enough attack elements to keep up the rhythm, Ambrosia is able to finish off Dario with a final swipe. I then head back to Termina. Now that Dario has been defeated, Kumquat can inherit the second Slicey Dicey Einlancer, which will skyrocket his damage. And with General Cornichon, we remove a flag from the wall and nab a Dragoon's Glory. That provides some pretty nice boosts for Ambrosia. And with that, I enter the Sea of Eden for the battle with Vita. And here we see the power of the dual Einlancers. And just for fun, I also perform the Genie Summon, which does great damage. That being said, physical attacks are definitely more potent at this point, and Kumquat strikes down Vita on his next turn. But she is not the boss that I've been worried about, because the next fight is with Polis Police. But before I head in, I make a stone sword for Kumquat that guarantees that he'll get critical hits with his strikes. And once the battle starts, Kumquat immediately gets whacked with a massive Megaton Fist, going down to critical health. But after I heal, it's just full-on offense for me and for the Polis Police, who uses a second Megaton Fist on Kumquat, almost taking him out again. But after I heal, Polis Police pops off with a bazooka, killing Kumquat and negating my prior healing. So I run. And since I missed a few attacks on try number 1 last time, I revert to the Eagle Eye strategy on try number 2. And because of Ambrosia's Stone Axe, his guaranteed hits become guaranteed critical hit, but Megaton Punch takes him out, so it's time to run again. On the next try, it's all offense once more. And I give the first Eagle Eye to Ambrosia because of his guaranteed critical hits with the Stone Axe. Kumquat takes the first Megaton Fist, but the goalpost remains the same. Whack the Polis Police before Bazooka comes out. I give the second Eagle Eye to Kumquat, and he too gets some enormous critical hits. Polis Police punches Kumquat a second time, but he's healed enough to take the hit. And Ambrosia's next set of attacks brings him to critical HP. And just one more attack from Kumquat destroys this bag of bolts before he can bop us with his bazooka. But within this facility, there is one more boss to bash, Fate. But the funny thing about Fate is that she sets herself up for failure right away by using a diminish element. This halves all element damage, but my physical attackers do not care at all. Sadly though, Fate does not count as a machine, meaning I don't have critical hits anymore and should have re-equipped the dual line lancers on Kumquat, but hey, we have what we have. Now, this boss operates on a 5-turn cycle, ending with a dark energy attack, and ultimately, the damage from that attack feels puny. But of course, if you just slack off on your healing, it's very easy to get killed by moderately strong attacks, which is exactly what happens. Super cringe, and I'm running away. But this allows me to re-equip the Ein Lancers, and rather than swinging mindlessly, I immediately cast Eagle Eye on Kumquat, and that damage, even without critical hits, is enormous. A freefall attack hits Kumquat next, but the next attack on the cycle is 2 weak gravity blows. So I wait to heal after those.
Oh, honey.
But the one healing spell is enough to fully heal Kumquat, leaving Ambrosia open to use his axiomatic tech. And this time, Dark Energy does even less damage. But funny enough, this happens. Keep your eye on the hit percentage. Okay, all of our stamina's back and we have 99 on. What? What? That was 99%! 99% truly means 99%, and I got that bad 1% that made me miss. It's just like Fire Emblem, guys. But fortunately, Kumquat still has Eagle Eye status, and the next attack brings Fate to critical health. She hits with a double gravity blow, but a massive sonic sword from Kumquat and a swing from Ambrosia finishes this battle, causes the dragons to eat each other, and propels us into the end game. Sadly, the next battle, as in all of these solo color challenges, forces me to break the challenge's rules, because the royal jelly under the sea only takes damage from red elements. So after 1 magma burst, 2 magma burst, 3 magma burst, 4 magma burst, it's down to critical health. And the 5th magma burst takes it out. I can stop anytime I want. I don't have a problem. Deal with it. So just for the record, it is technically impossible to beat Chrono Cross with only green characters and elements, but I'm gonna continue on anyway. 5 red elements, that's all I used. With that, we bring Birch into his ship, attach the engine to our boat, the boat that we borrowed and did not buy, and fly to the final dungeon.
Nope.
There are 6 bosses to fight in this dungeon, and the first is arguably the most dangerous. Territor, the yellow boss. But while it's dangerous, it also takes the most damage from my characters. I open with an Eagle Eye, and it starts with Wave of Fear and Spirits Up to raise its defense and lower ours. And after I attack some more, it makes the mistake of mashing my potatoes, so we hack it into healing range. And after we attack some more, it strikes back with Omega Yellow, which is just not quite strong enough to destroy Ambrosia. So a final tornado from Kumquat blows him away. Pyrotor is next, and while he does decrease my character's attack power with Sadness Wave, this guy lacks any tricks to trouble my tree-like treasures. But that doesn't matter, because I forget to heal Ambrosia, and he gets taken down by an Omega Red. Once again proving that I am not the Gigaplant I thought I was. Or maybe I'm just careless. I don't know. I just work here. Also, I don't know when it happened, but at some point I made a Rainbow Axe, which against non-machines is much stronger than the Stone Axe. So I equip that to Ambrosia. Then, once I don't f*** up my healing, this guy just dies within a minute. Then, Animotor takes the stage. And even though my produce does reduce damage to him, he can't do much back to them and dies pretty gosh darn quickly. But now it's time for Gravitor, who uses a familiar tactic, Hellbound, the one-hit kill spell that takes out Ambrosia. So only the power of prayer can get me through that. And on the second try, my prayers are answered, as he sends a potato to hell instead, allowing me to clean up within seconds and yielding an absolutely ridiculous star level. The penultimate boss is Luxator, and thankfully there are no instant death shenanigans in this battle. But sadly, Omega White takes out Ambrosia. But I see the writing on the wall here. No matter how well I play, that attack will kill one of my veggies, so I let Kumquat take the wheel. And his damage is so ridiculous that Luxator doesn't stand a chance. Look at that damage. Look at it! Look at it now! Wow. And the final boss of this gauntlet is Aquator, and deja vu, it freezes Kumquat with an Omega Blue, and soon after it freezes Ambrosia with an Ice Blast. But once Kumquat thaws, I get this cool glitchy thing where he still looks frozen and just glides over to the enemy. But as cool as that is, it's not so cool that Ambrosia gets taken out by an Omega Blue and I gotta run. But somehow, on the second try, he just doesn't use Omega Blue or Ice Blast, so I'm able to Eagle Eye and whack him hard. And while there's a big attack combo I'm not expecting, Ambrosia survives it, strikes back, and watches Kumquat wreck with a Sonic Sword. This brings Aquator low enough that it heals, and I follow suit. And because I remember to heal, the Omega Blue does not kill this time. This allows my plant-based pretties to top off, pop off, and enjoy some frozen Ambrosia. Unfortunately though, this guy knows that he's going down like the Titanic or a twink at a rave and sends the iceberg our way. But Ambrosia just barely hangs on despite being a popsicle, and Kumquat takes down this water horsey. So with the 6 color bosses defeated, there's just one more moldy mess to take care of. The Time Devourer. The Time Devourer is a hell of a boss, with 6 phases to terrorize me and multiple tricks up his sleeve. But phase 0 is relatively straightforward with an Eagle Eye and some whacking. And phase 1, no tricks here either, particularly since Time Devourer is now yellow and takes massive damage from my greens, and he only uses level 1 elements. Phase 2 though has a small complication. Time Devourer uses level 2 elements in this form, and that means he has access to the insta-kill element Hell Soul, and that means Kumquat falls on his bumquat and we're starting over. The second time though, Ambrosia dodges the sudden death and I make it to phase 3, the green phase. And this phase, once again, has no tricks, but it absorbs green elements, so I just can't use them. But it does mean that I can just build up my element levels and make sure I'm healed for phase 4. And while this monster can use Hellbound, my prep from phase 3 allows me to blitz it with Sonya and Genie summons, and that propels us into phase 5. I hit hard with physical attacks and Tornado, but this phase brings out the power, starting with Freefall. But even so, the veggies hit hard enough to jettison us into the final phase. I have initiative here, so I heal to full, whack with Green Jesus, and blow him away with a Tornado. Time Devourer tries to blow me back, phrasing? But with a few more attacks from Greasus, the battle is won and the end of the challenge is within reach. Oh my god, look at that star level. More strength! Okay, fade out again, sorry. Sorry. I have a couple of things to take care of before fighting the Devourer of Time. First, Butternut digs up this strange onion. My name is... And while he's already a plant, a turnip specifically, Rutabaga seemed more apt. Orla also wants to tag along, and she becomes Willow.
You want a willow pill?
A weeping willow. Look at those sad eyes. And after using the Forget-Me-Not pot to nab some green monsters, I head to the Grand Slam. I'm gonna have to use only green monsters to beat it. But I've been working on this script for over 40 hours, and I'm kinda dead, so I'm just gonna tell you that the Wingipede clutched it in the end, and Janice is renamed Carrot. So now it's time for the Excuse me, I was not done. The final boss. Okay, now you can do the thing. As you might imagine, the plant-based pals are not changing much for this battle. Eagle Eye on Kumquat, a whack, a thwack, and give the Eagle Eye back. The big crystal dude then uses an Omega Green on Potato, turning the entire field green. My physical attack damage is at maximum, I serve up some Sonya, a Genie grants my wish for massive damage, and the Devourer of Time just uses another green element, Aeroblaster. And he eventually wises up and uses Omega Yellow, but I'm on an all-green field, so it's no big deal to heal it off. And everything culminates in one final Kumquatian slash. So my 2 pulverized perishables are finally free to be made into a stew. And click this playlist to watch me do it again with another color.